Okay, guys, welcome to Interworldwide. It has been a minute since I've been on the channel, and I am joined here by Christian. How are you, mate?
I've been stressed out by Inter so much that I started doing this puzzle to relax myself. I guess my blood pressure and everything was through the roof. I lost like 10 years of my life. I'm kind of somewhat down, going a pretty good way right now, but I'm
Hey,
legit doing a puzzle because Inter got me stressed out.
100%. When you're watching those games, you just need it. It's either I used to smoke and I used to watch the Inter games outside, and I'd be one after another, chain, and it was just non-stop. And now I've stopped smoking. It's like I got to think of something else to do. So, look, it is an impromptu stream. So, a couple of our viewers have already seen that surprise stream from Geo. Quality cinema intro. Yeah, I just pressed one of the buttons and that's what happened. King Darian Rivers is in the house.
That's my
How
boy
are you?
Gary.
You got your fan club going there,
I love that
and
man.
Geo in there supporting Inter never helps with stress of college life, mate. Stress of college life, stress of life in general. We're both fathers here, and you know what? Supporting Inter, it's really up there. You know, having a kid is one thing, but supporting this club is definitely something else. But yes,
I think I'm
Inter.
more stressed out from Inter than my own son.
Exactly. But yes, we're here to talk about Inter. Um, we actually haven't had the greatest of runs. You know, our last win was against Salernitana, and that was a 5-0 win. So you're playing last place, and that's sort of expected. And then you go back to the 23rd of January, and we beat Venezia. And before that, it was the 10th of January where we beat Lazio. So this year, we've had one, two, three wins in the Serie A. And there was a lot of expectation at the start of the season, you know, after Scudetto 19, and a lot of the fans have finally started to crack, you know, the Inzaghi outpost, Checo's too old, all of that. And I'll throw it to you, Christian. What is going on?
So the thing is, a lot of people got to understand, like, the whole Jekyll thing. Bro, it hasn't been working for over a month, and Inzaghi hasn't changed his tactics. That's the thing. If you're a top coach, you need to be able to adapt. Okay, if this isn't working, then this has to work. Well, let's try to do this, let's try to do that. And the thing I guess that has a lot of fans like myself worried is the fact that he has no plan B. He has no plan B. Like, how do you get to this level without a proper plan B is my worry. And it's like you're not doing anything to improve the situation. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's just me, but that's how I feel.
Look, I think that's the case, and everyone's saying, and we touched on it before the start of the stream. Um, you know, he had them working. He had the right combination. We went into winter break, one as winter champions, but two as we went into the break with only one loss to our name, and you move past that, and we're now on 3 losses and 9 draws, and a lot of those draws have come in the last 9 months, 9 months, 9 match days, and it's just something where you know the expectation was really high, and Eduardo touched on this earlier. Didn't we all think at the beginning if we made third or fourth place, we'd be satisfied, including the next round of the UCL? And I think the expectation was there for a lot of people, especially after, and he keeps on going, we had that initial run, we're probably out of gas with the pace we were playing. And that expectation was set, but then Inzaghi sort of forced us to all reevaluate our expectations after that first half of the season performance. You know, it's definitely one of those things where, you know, you lose Lukaku, you lose Ericsson, you lose Hakimi and Conti, And you replace Lukaku with an aged Ziyech, or you replace Hakimi with an unproven Dumfries.
Yeah, but
And
Dumfries hasn't even been bad. He's actually been
no,
good.
he's been fantastic, but to the caliber of player, you've downgraded. And then from Ericsson, we've now got an Hakan who had a really good spell in the middle of the season, but he's been quite average.
I don't think he's been bad though.
Yeah, no, he hasn't been
To me,
bad, but
Hakan has probably been one of our better players and more consistent players. I want to say Barella regressed the most. And that's the thing that's worrisome about Inzaghi is with Conte, we saw players improve. But so far under Inzaghi, we've seen players regress. And that's the thing that's worrying as an Inter fan. You're kind of like, okay, I get it. Our expectations are high, sure, whatever. But we're flying high plus 14 on Juve. Now, if they beat us, there's the potential of them of getting past us. And Inter fans are like, well, we still got a game in hand. That's not the point. You're plus 14 on them. You shouldn't be letting them get this close to you to the point where they pass you. And for me, the not seeing improvement in players and see them regress. You see Barella regress. You've seen Lautaro debatably regress, not regress. You've seen De Vrij shamefully regress. Like it's insane how far off he's been from last year. Actually, even the year before that, where he was voted Serie A's best defender. So it's one of those things where you're like, all right, so what is it? I can't blame the coach because these players are getting worse under him.
Yeah, and I think Gio summarized what I said in that sense, but I also think the start of the season wasn't Inzaghi's doing. I think we had the momentum of last season and last year's Scudetto. The players were flying high, and you really couldn't see Inzaghi's input into the team at the start of the season because the team was running themselves. They knew what they were doing. And then as soon as Inzaghi started to intervene, you really see the Inzaghi effect take over what Conte had built, and it just diminished. And you look at a lot of teams where great managers have moved on from, and you look at, for instance, Chelsea. Sarri took over and everyone was like, "Oh, how good is he doing? How well is he doing?" But he took over a Conte team,
Yeah.
and they did well, and then they dropped off. And I think it was Ole Gunnar took over United,
Same
and
thing.
he took over Mourinho team, and you see the manager slowly start to have more of an input, and the team starts to decline. And we saw that both at Chelsea, United, and now at Inter. Rocky Ferraro on our Facebook has hit us up saying Inzaghi needs to change up the formation, try something different to freshen up things. Other teams know what we are doing every game. I like what you're saying in that regards, but I don't think we need to move to a formation change as of yet. But
What about personnel?
I think personnel, definitely. You've got Concedo, you've got Correa, and you're relying on Dzeko and Lautaro. And we've seen how effective Sanchez is as a substitute. But when you try and start him, it sort of doesn't work because he's explosive. He's got that extra pace. He's got all of that stuff. But I think Emiliano has hit the nail on the head. We should start from the beginning again and get the players to do simple things right. And they're clearly doing something right because they're not losing. But I don't feel the motivation's there.
Well, to me, I kind of feel I've seen this across the interverse and all that a lot of people say that Inzaghi's lost the locker room already because the players don't seem too motivated for him. But you also got to think about it. A lot of them are impacted from quite drastic changes. Example, Lautaro. When he had Lukaku, he knew where Lukaku was going to be at all times with the final defender. That was his position. Dzeko was meant to come in and play that Lukaku role. But the problem with Dzeko is he's so static that he's dropping so deep into the midfield. He's dropping into the defense. That Lautaro has been playing higher than him, and that's not the way they're supposed to be playing. Dzeko is supposed to be the primera punta. He's supposed to be last man, but he's coming all the way deep into the midfield. It just doesn't make sense. And like Gio just said, we're back to Spalletti ball. Let's just cross the ball and hope for the best. The way Lautaro and Lukaku used to play together. And we're suffering from that a lot.
Yeah, and I just think, we had that momentum and Inzaghi didn't capitalize on it. And Inzaghi's got this mentality that if a player gets a yellow card, he substitutes him. He doesn't want to risk that red card coming. But sometimes that player that gets that yellow card, we need on the pitch. And when you take them off, we struggle. We really do. And we've seen it time and time again. And then there's all this talk of when's Brozo going to re-sign? When's the Fry going to re-sign? And all of this. And we've had all of these communications, but nothing really eventuating. And then you look at AC Milan. Well, what have they done different? Nothing much, really. They've just Pioli learnt from his mistakes last year, where last year Milan Scudetto to lose, and that's exactly what they did. They fell from grace, just like Inter have. And he didn't. He learnt from his mistakes, and at the rate he's going to lead them to, Scudetto glory. But it's one of those things where Inzaghi's coming to this team which was built for him, and he just can't do what's needed. Now, Rivers, we've got Juventus next. Inzaghi can't make the game. They put you in charge. What are you doing different?
Well, Toro's out because he's got COVID, which is
7 days, so he misses international break.
I would actually experiment. I would take Dzeko out and put Perisic there. I would start Gosens as well. And then I would start Correa and give him a run. We know Alexis is more effective as a substitute. So if it doesn't work, he's the one that you're going to sub. But you want your best players on the pitch. I know it's a little out there for me to say Perisic and Gosens together, but think about it. If you start Bastoni, Gosens, and Perisic on that left side, it's gonna be crazy. You think he'll play? I mean, it's in 14 days, but
I think if the repercussions aren't too much, it's probably a blessing in disguise. He won't be playing for Argentina in this international break. But anything is possible. It's ultimately down to the team and the player. But I like your change in tactics where you're not ruffling too many feathers, but at the same time, you are doing something completely different.
If Toto clears COVID, I know it's a week now, but you never know. I've seen them rest the players because they had COVID, and it was like 2-3 weeks before the game. But if he's gonna be fit, I would start him with Perisic. You put in your best players and your players that can create out of nothing. Perisic and Toto have a pretty good relationship. They know how to play with each other. You take the one that's been causing the issues, Dzeko out. You insert Gosens on the wing, another very attacking player, and you put Perisic as another forward up top with Lautaro, and they can work. Now, if it doesn't, cool. It is what it is. But at least we tried something different. I don't see Inzaghi doing it though. Inzaghi is so stuck in his ways that he's not going to do it. And I had this conversation with my boy Liam earlier. He was like, "Yo, the problem with Inzaghi is he thinks that Inter is Lazio, and he could bring players like Casero, and freaking Correa and expect them to be up to the same standard at Inter, but the Lazio players. It's not the same. Unless you're bringing SMS or Cheeto Immobile, They're not cracking the starting lineup at Inter. That money could have been better spent somewhere else. Just honestly speaking. I get it. Casero is just a dry loan, but what's the point of bringing him if he's not really bringing anything to the table? I don't even expect to get a goal out of this guy, to be honest with you. What was the point of it? At this point, you should have just kept old boy Satriano. You should have just kept him instead of loaning him out. It would have been another number 9.
Yeah, look, I last season and the season before, I watched a fair bit of Inzaghi ball at Lazio, and Casado was his impact sub. He would bring him on in the 70th, 75th minute, and he'd either get the assist or score that late goal that would get them the result. But then he's got that player, he doesn't do that, and he brings him on in the 90th minute when we're 1-1 with Fiorentina. And it's like, well, what are you expecting to change? What are you expecting to happen in, the 3-4 minutes extra time that's there? How do you expect any result? And we didn't touch on it much when Inter was doing well, but we always complained, why the subs when he makes them? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And I just think that he really has so much potential, and he has so much at this club where he wasn't spoilt for choice like this at Lazio. He had what he had, and that was essentially all he had. Whereas here, it was one of those things where it's he's struggling to. I think he's spoiled for choice, and at the same time, he doesn't know how to manage this top tier team. Now, let me throw you another question. Inzaghi is known to be one of the best managers when it comes to Coppa Italia, and he took a couple of the Coppas away from Juventus in their heyday. He got a couple of Super Coppas as well. If he wins the Coppa Italia, does that change anything in your opinion?
Nope. To me, he had the Scudetto, bro. You at the winter break, you had a gap on Napoli, Milan, and Juve, and you squandered that gap to the point where we might finish 4th. What would I rather take, a Scudetto or a Coppa Italia? This can't be a legitimate question. And then you hear people sit there and say, well, at least we won against Liverpool and Anfield. Did we go through? That sounds like a Napoli type of celebration. Like, hey, we did good over there, but did you go through? No. So nobody's going to go 5 years down. 5 years from now, nobody's going to YouTube that game, Inter versus Liverpool 1-0, and you're not going to see a highlight reel with some cool epic music in the background saying Inter won against Liverpool. No, nobody's going to do that. It's not like we did something great and we came back and won. So that whole, well, at least we won in Anfield, he gets a pass. That's not in my books. Like, nah, dude, you don't get no pass from me.
If we did that in the first fixture at home, it would have been more of a accolade, in my opinion. I just think that we went to Anfield, they're up 2-0, and they're in the fight of their life in the Premier League as well. They're basically, if they win every game, they win the title. So they've got something to look forward to. They had the 2-goal buffer. And when you've got a 2-goal buffer, you can afford to concede 1 goal. And let's just say, Inter didn't play phenomenally against Liverpool. Liverpool were very unlucky with a lot of their chances. Salah coming off the post, and they just didn't capitalize. So if you're taking a lot away from that 1-0 win, you're really, plucking at thin air here, because ultimately, if you did that in the first leg and you go into the second leg up 1-0, then that's different. It's a different ball game, exactly. And, you really can play for the draw or however. But when you're down 2-0 and you win a game against a team who really should have had... Inter played worse in this game they won than what
Yes.
what they did in the game they lost.
Yes.
So
100%.
a lot of people don't analyze and look at that. But I personally think Inter did well to get to where they did. I didn't expect them to get past Liverpool. If we drew Ajax, I definitely thought Inter should have qualified for the next round if we kept that initial draw that before UEFA mucked up. But I think that you don't take anything away from that. But I do like what Maddie has dropped in. Guys, before I bring the comment up, check out some of Maddie's articles on the Interworldwide website. They are phenomenal. He does go in depth and he does have some opinions that may not be agreed upon. But let me bring it up.
Boy Marty?
If we beat Juve, do we get the momentum we need?
That's a big if. That's like if we beat Juve, but what if we lose out all the rest of the games? So what is it? We just beat Juve and that was it? It's just I wish, but in the same sense, it's like, yo, if we beat Juve, all right, let's beat them, but then we'll probably end up slipping up against somebody else. Well, we slipped up against Genoa. We slipped up against Torino. We slipped up against all these teams that we should have beat, but we didn't.
So into April, we have Juventus away. We then host Verona. We then travel to Spezia. We've got the Coppa Italia fixture against AC. And then we host Roma. Now, if we beat Juventus, I really do think the momentum's there to beat Verona and Spezia. But then you've got a derby in the semi-final of the Coppa Italia. And that's going to
be the more momentum shifter than the
yeah, because ultimately you win that, you're going into the Roma fixture with your head held high coming off a derby win and qualifying into the final of the Coppa Italia. Whereas if you lose Juventus and you should still be, it doesn't matter about momentum, you should still be getting something out of Verona or Spezia. And by the looks of it, Inzaghi likes getting his draws. So I think the momentum, like you said, is the AC Milan fixture. But then you've got only 4 games left. So is that too little too late? Because ultimately, it's a position where Inter didn't need to be at this point. So I just want to throw something at you. Today, there was news. Inter went to the highest of the high courts to have the Bologna fixture nullified as a 3-0 loss to Bologna. Why?
Because we're pathetic.
We should be going. I personally said this to Anthony. Bologna, they're not playing well. I think we beat them the first time 6-1.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines. I don't know why they would have wanted to play Inter, and I personally thought 3-0 loss to them would have been more beneficial than actually playing and getting belted. But now I think Bologna's got hope. Just looking at how Inter's performing, and really, if precedent is anything to go by, well, this game's going to be played. And it's going to be played, I think I saw reports at around the 14th of April, the 13th of April, between the Verona Spezia fixture. But I don't know. I just think it's something where we shouldn't be worried about these fixtures against Bologna. In this run home, there's really 2 teams that scare me, and that's Juventus and Roma. I'm not counting the Coppa fixture because I'm talking Scudetto here. But is it a little too late? Do you really see both Napoli and Milan slipping up as that much?
I could see 1 slip from Milan, maybe 2. But I'm more likely to see us slip than them. because of Inzaghi's poor tactical choices and his ability to adapt. I could see us slip. I see Milan slip twice, and then we're going to slip as well. So we would not do anything with those points that were given to us. There. It's just, man, and I'm one of the optimistic ones. For me to sit there and be like, "Yo, I have no faith in this guy getting us across the line," says a lot. And it's been his reputation at Lazio. Now he's at Inter doing an epic collapse. Like right now, we're talking about what if we lose 3 games and Atalanta or Roma pass us and we're in the Europa League? It's not completely far fetched. With the way we're going right now, you gotta think that's a possibility. And with the ownership we have now, do you think they're gonna do anything?
That's my next question. Ownership. Sunning. My opinion is they have to go.
Yep. Look, I appreciate what they did. Cool. Thank you. You guys stabilized the club, but right now you can't do nothing for the club. What you're trying to do is save face, and I hate to involve politics in when we're speaking, but with everything going around China, not just COVID, now this whole Russia fiasco, who's to say that Chinese companies aren't sanctioned next? If they go out and do give Russia, weapons and economic relief, all the Western countries already said they're going to sanction them. So who's to say that Sunning now isn't sanctioned out of Italy, assets frozen, Inter going to bankruptcy because of them?
Mm.
You never know. Look at Chelsea right now. They're talking about going back into administration because Abramovich is being picky on who he wants to sell the team to. There's word saying that he doesn't want to sell it to a Western company, an American company, or an English company. So who are you going to sell it to? Now you're
Yeah.
being picky. There's people that want to come in, but because they're from the United States, you don't want to sell to them. So
Yep.
who's to say that we don't end up in the same situation and we go bankrupt?
No, so we will come back to this conversation. Let's clear some of the comments here. Thank you to the 15 people who are in the chat. Don't forget, guys, to like and subscribe to Inter Worldwide for all of your Inter coverage. We have Emiliano. We were 9 points clear with a game in hand. This is disaster. Now we're 6 points behind with a game in hand. So it's a 15-point turnaround, and it's something not worth. Lashton, he's a bit more optimistic than most. I don't believe the title's out of reach, but we definitely blew our chance to make it a lot more comfortable. Look, there's 27 points up for grab for Inter, 24 for the rest of the club. So it's definitely in reach, but momentum says a lot. If Inter can get on the pitch and win every game from here on out, and we still lose the title, well, again, it's not acceptable because we had such a good buffer. We
Poor
need
man
some.
management is what cost us the title. And that poor man management doesn't come down solely to Sunny, comes down to one person. Take it how you want it.
Mourinho doesn't want to lose 3 games this season to Inter. Yes, Inter beat them in the Scudetto as well as in the Coppa. I don't think Mourinho would mind losing to Inter, but at the same time, look, it's not really his choice. It just depends, and the way Inter's playing, they should. Why are we so Brozo dependent?
Well, that's because that's one of your better players, and your better players always play. The problem is that management made a bonehead move and let Sensi go, one of the only other players that could have played that position because Sensi he offers a lot to the team when healthy, whether we like it or not. Yeah, we can all sit here and troll him for always being hurt, but we hurt ourselves letting him go.
Yeah. Oh, look, I still don't get it. If he's good enough for Mancini's Italian squad, why is he not good enough to be playing in our squad? And he's been playing quite well.
Yeah.
Um, but yes, definitely a very good point. Um, I hope this international break serves as a reset on league momentum. It definitely will. And you see a lot of teams like AC Milan not enjoying the fact that international breaks come around. But at the same time, if Inter don't fix their act, it doesn't really matter what the other teams do. Uh Good question, Darian. Who should replace Inzaghi?
I don't think there's anyone out there. No,
Zidane.
that's the problem. I mean Zidane, but Zidane's not going to come. Well, look at the ownership we have right now. There's probably no chance of investment coming anytime soon, and that's the thing that I don't think people understand is unless we get new owners, don't expect much in the window unless we get rid of players. And that's the worst thing you can do. If you get rid of Lautaro or Barella or Skriniar or Bastoni in the window, I don't care who you replace them with. Even if you go and get Dybala, let's get one thing straight. I like Dybala, but he's not replacing Lautaro. Look how many games injured, how many games Dybala's missed because he's been injured compared to how many games Lautaro has missed due to injury. It's a stark difference, my brother. That would be the dumbest move.
Yeah, and that just moves on to Ashesh's comment of is the Dybala coming to Inter? Look, it is quite possible, but at the same time, his wages will be high, and will you really get what you're paying for? That's what I got to say on that front. Honestly, I think the kid has so much potential. I think he would have been fantastic at Juventus, but I also feel Juventus relying on Ronaldo, when they purchased him, really hampered Dybala's progression and what he could have done and what he could have been. I personally thought he was the next Del Piero for the squad. And that was just my opinion. Is anyone interested in purchasing Inter? We have had many offers, but there's one thing that stands in the way. When you have owners who refuse to sell, and when you have owners who value the club so highly at over $1 billion, you really scare a lot of people off. And we've had offers of 850, 900 million, but when it comes to $1 billion, and he's valuing them at about 1.2 billion. When you have that, you really can't sell to anyone. It's like me wanting to sell a Toyota Camry, but I want 100 grand for it. Well, it's not worth it. No one's going to ever pay it. Doesn't matter how appealing. It might have Bluetooth, but what can you do? So ultimately, that's the situation. Inter is a very marketable club, and you really got to look at what they've done the last couple of years. They have marketed so well. They've got the I am Inter and all of that, the Scudetto win, the rebranding of the logo itself. It is very marketable. So anyone would want to purchase it. But the question is, they're not going to pay more than what it's worth. So if
Not,
that happens,
not just
then
what it's worth, they want them to pay the debts as well. And
yeah.
that be serious. Like you gotta make it reasonable and attractive for somebody.
Look, I think if what you alluded to does come to fruition, where sanctions potentially may be placed on China, I think any more rumblings of rumors, you will have a lot more chance of selling, Sunning selling, because they don't want to have their assets tied up in Italy. Because yeah, they're gonna need the funds if sanctions are placed. But yeah, Emiliano again. We were supposed to renew Brozo 3 months ago. We were supposed to renew Brozo 12 months ago. It is it is one of those things that keeps happening. And Gio, yeah, the renewal is scaring me. Look, no one's going to give Brozo what Inter's going to give Brozo. No team can really value Brozo like Inter, especially with his age and his position. Inter have catered to him. He hasn't catered to Inter. Pedro Rodriguez has commented, Thuram in the summer.
I
I
don't see
think
it.
there are so many rumors of so many players. They've Jonathan David from Lille, I think it is.
I don't see it either.
Thuram Skamaka is probably
Maybe.
the only thing I think that really gains traction, because you got to remember we do also have Onana coming as well. So anything possible. And King Darian, the more Suning holds out, the less they will receive. Time to be smart, Zhang. Well, that's the issue. They aren't smart. So, look, I'm going to change your role again. You were Inzaghi a couple of minutes ago. You're now Marotta. Transfer window comes around. What are you doing?
I already know that I've been told to make loans with obligations. I don't see it happening again unless something happens in the market. Yes, COVID, all the restrictions are lifting, a lot of things are being moved, but now you're looking at a potential World War III, whether we want to believe it or not. Marotta is looking at it like, what can I really do? Because the Chinese money might really be frozen, and then we're stuck. And if their money gets frozen, then we can really think about going into bankruptcy, like a legitimate thing. And it's a scary thought because it can happen. It can happen. You everything is a whole new world right now. And if I'm Marotta, I'm looking at loans, straight up loans with obligations. The only one Fratesi might come. We could probably pull that off. I wouldn't be surprised if Brozovic really doesn't resign and he goes somewhere else because the Chinese are playing too many games. This is something that was supposed to be ironed out months ago. It's dark, bro. Like honestly, you sit there and you think about it. You could be in for some dark days if things don't start cleaning up. And especially with Chelsea's money being stuck and frozen. I mean, at our best, we get Lukaku back on a loan.
But
Um,
what's that going to cost Inter?
Probably to cover his wages or part of his wages. I don't think Chelsea's one to take losses, but at this point, with the whole Abramovich fiasco, I wouldn't be surprised if they take something cut and dry. Just be like, all right, let's just try and get this off our wages, or let's just try and offload this unhappy player and get what we can get right now because
13.5 million a season, and they still owe Inter 70 million.
correct. And if Abramovich doesn't sell, he might just end up leaving completely if they go bankrupt. If they go bankrupt, which is like, yo, that's a scary thought. Like, people gotta understand. Well, we're in a new age right now. Like, it's scary to sit there and think a club can go bankrupt because where the owners from. Well, let's look where our owners from China, bro. Like, they're right there too. They're backing Russia up right now, which is a complete surprise. But
Yeah, well, look, I just want to touch on that. Esteban Jared Godinez, we're really talking about sanction on China. This is ridiculous. Now, look, we're not political here at Inter Worldwide, so I just want to make that clear. But we have seen what the sanctions on Russia has done to a massive club like Chelsea, who is one of the biggest clubs in the world, not just Europe. And how it has frozen them to the point where they've requested that their Champions League fixture against Real Madrid gets played on the same day as the Manchester City and Atletico fixture, simply so they can travel with them because they can't afford to fly there. Now, if that is what's happened with Chelsea and the world and politics and everything involved and everything that's spoken about comes to fruition with what China is planning and what the world plans to do with the same sort of implications onto China as what they've done with Russia. Well, morally, Italy will turn around and place the same sanctions on China as what they've done with Russia. And if that's the case, well, we got to talk about it because it impacts our club. It's not political. We're not, promoting anything or talking anything. It is just the way the club is run.
look, whether you
And
like it or not, if I'm hearing it in the United States that Biden's already talking about sanctioning him, you better believe the NATO's going to do the same exact thing. If China actually goes and gives them weapons and all that stuff because Russia isn't getting it done on their own, I can guarantee you there will be sanctions. And you got to remember something, not trying to put too much politics in there, just how Russia's going at Ukraine, think China's not thinking about Taiwan. So it's a possibility. It has to be there. You got to think about it. That's why.
And I think that's got to be on the minds of the board at Inter. And it's also going to be on the minds of the Football Federation in Italy, where if this is the case, we've seen what it's done to Russian teams in Europe. We've seen what it's done to Russian owners in Europe. And China is, you can't treat them any differently. So, look, like I said, we're not being political. We are being realistic. And we are discussing what can happen. And like Darian's here, Rivers dropping many facts. Yes, it is. And that's what we're doing. We're not, spinning our own story onto this. We're literally talking truths. And a lot of fans see the 90 minutes that's played on the pitch and the notifications of this team's purchased this player. You need to start looking deeper into it and realize owners and all of that stuff, our debt, it all comes into question. And even if Inter do go into administration, the $800 odd million in debt is what gets paid off first. So we've seen it happen to some very well-established clubs like the likes of Parma, who qualified for Europa and a week later were relegated to Serie D because of financial issues. When they're meant to be playing in Europe, they're playing in 4th division Italian soccer. So it's one of those things that you really got to understand that, we're all for talking soccer and football, but at the same time, we've got to be realistic. And that is one of the things. And like you said, Inter can't do much. As a team, we can't be buying players, and we can't be. And when I say buying players, Inter aren't going to be buying potential like they did with Gabigol, like they did with Martinez. They need to start buying star players, and we can't afford star players at the moment. People talking Simeone from Verona. The price tag's too high. Like Vlahovic, price tag's too high. And manager-wise, there is a manager I'd love to see at the club, Atletico Simeone, and I just think he's the highest paid manager in the world.
I could see him coming just for a new challenge. I mean, think about it. He's been raping Atletico. Excuse the word I'm using because it's a different world now. But he's been getting Atletico over on them. They haven't won anything to justify him being 40 million euros a year. If I was Atletico,
he won the title last year.
Is that Champions League? You're not paying 40 million to somebody to win La Liga.
Look, I think Simeone has had the same impact on Atletico as what Arsene Wenger had on Arsenal, and the loyalty Atletico showed Diego based on him winning the title is the same loyalty Arsenal showed Wenger when he became an invincible. And you really need to cut your losses at some point. I would love to see him on the sideline for Inter, but that can't happen until we have new owners, until our debt's being cleared, and all of the above.
One thing I found out from my boy Liam was the whole Chelsea situation over Lukaku. I think we sold that debt to a bank so we would get the money all at once and we wouldn't have to wait for it. And Chelsea would just pay the bank. I don't know. Somebody can go and do some research on that. That's just what I heard. So even then, if Lukaku doesn't come, if Chelsea goes into administration, it makes you wonder what can really happen with that whole transaction. Would he be a free agent? Would he come back? What would he do exactly? It's one of those crazy things. I mean, the world's a crazy place right now. So who knows?
Yeah, exactly. There, we have been going for 45 minutes. There is not much more to cover. We do have international break this week, so you'll be seeing a couple of videos discussing the Juventus fixture coming from Anthony on his side of things there. So make sure you stay tuned for that. From all of us here at Interworldwide, I would love to say thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure discussing with the fans, and it's always a pleasure having you by my side, Christian.
Yo, I miss it. We used to hang out all the time. Now since we became dads, we don't get to talk often.
I don't know. It's like that friend that gets a girlfriend, then you lose him.
Yeah.
It's the same thing that happens when you become parents. But thank you guys. Always a pleasure. Forza Inter worldwide. Ciao.